The three factors of the revolution of consciousness. The revolution of consciousness has three factors that you know very well: to be born, to die, and to sacrifice for humanity. To be born is entirely a sexual issue, to die also involves sex, and sacrifice for humanity is love. Clearly, sacrifice is fulfilled through esoteric work for the benefit of the world. Let's begin with the first factor, to be born. Indeed, man is not yet a fully realized being. All creatures are born complete, except for the human being. A dog is born a dog, and as a dog, it is complete. An eagle is born an eagle, equipped with great wings and a marvelous vision that allows it to hunt even distant serpents. It is born complete. But the poorer intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, is born incomplete. It happens that he is born without the vehicles he should have. He is born without an astral body, without a mental body, without a causal body. So, what is born? A physical body, a planetary body with a vital seat, and nothing more. What is beyond that? The ego, which is animal in nature. Does the poorer intellectual animal possess a consciousness? Yes, he does, but it is bottled up within the ego, that's all, a sleeping consciousness, a consciousness, let's say, a consciousness conditioned by its own imprisonment. Thus, to be precise, he is born incomplete. The seed that penetrates, let's say, into a womb for its proper development, by the mere fact of being born, does not mean, by any means, that it has completed its developmental processes. The seed that was gestated in a mother's womb and was born, that came into the world, is an incomplete seed in every sense. Because, for one thing, it does not possess the superior existential bodies of the being, and for another, its physical body hasn't even finished developing. The complete development of the physical body occurs through the ages of 7, 14, and up to 21 years. Thanks to the creative energy, the physical body was able to gestate within the mother's womb. Thanks to creative energy, the physical body can continue its development through the ages of 7, 14, and 21 years. Thus, the physical body itself, by being born, is not complete, it needs to develop. Unfortunately, we see how adolescents, without having completed their development process, are already fornicating, which is manifestly absurd. Because the creative energy they are wasting is necessary, essential to complete the development of the physical body. Therefore, honestly, sexual functionality should begin at 21 years of age, not before. Because before then, the seed that entered the mother's womb has not yet completed its developmental processes, and subjecting it to copulation is absurd. Considering all these things, my esteemed brothers, it is well worth reflecting a bit. From the age of 21 onward, sexual energy is free for other activities. Before the age of 21, sexual energy has only one purpose: to complete the development of the seed that was born. That is, to complete the development of the physical body. After 21 years, the energy is freed. It could be used after the age of 21, the creative energy, to create the superior existential bodies of the being and reach the second birth. Unfortunately, people do not know how to use creative energy, the energy that fertilized the mother's womb, the energy that allowed the seed to develop within the same womb, to be born, and to go through the ages of 7, 14, and 21 years. People do not know how to use this energy. Once it is free, instead of using it for their realization and to complete themselves, because the human being is born incomplete, they expel it from their organism. We well know that people extract the exiohihari from their organism, I mean by this, the sacred sperm, and this is very serious. When touching upon this issue related to birth, the first factor of the revolution of consciousness, we must understand that the current humanity, in every sense, is marching involutively. We know very well that adolescents not only waste sexual material, creative energy or sacred sperm, through copulation but also acquire vices such as masturbation. This vice, unfortunately, has become more common today than washing one's hands. Young people, whether male or female, have this unfortunate vice, and thus they miserably ruin their brains and become idiotic. How many wills that could have been marvelous are exhausted, how many beautiful faces wither, all due to a lack of instruction. Because, truly, neither boys nor girls receive proper instruction about sexual matters in schools or colleges, and, of course, the sexual impulse makes them feel the need to use sex, but since they have no guidance, young people usually talk to their friends, and this is how the repugnant vice of masturbation begins. And that is the misfortune of our time, along with other vices that, unfortunately, have also become very common, such as homosexuality and lesbianism. Obviously, homosexuals are degenerated seeds that are absolutely useless, that never germinate. The same goes for lesbians, they are degenerated seeds that can never germinate. Thus, the vices currently related to sex are unbearable. If men and women could rise up purely, with perfect and complete sexual education, everything would be different. If young people, whether male or female, could indeed reach the age of 21 respecting sex, with true purity, it would be admirable, we would have a new generation of better beings. Unfortunately, poor humanity does not receive sexual education when it is most needed, thus, they reach the age of 21 already degenerated. Normally, one should reach the age of 21 with healthy, strong bodies. That would be wonderful. If at 21 years of age, when sexual energy is freed for any other kind of activity, it could be used for the purpose of creating the superior existential bodies of the being, that would be formidable. Obviously, I believe you already know the key to alchemy, which Krumheller gave in Latin, and which says, Immissum membrum virile in vaginum femini sine isolationi seminis. In summary, we would say, connection of the lingam yoni, without ever spilling the vase of Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great god Ibis of Thoth. As you can see, I am giving the key plainly and clearly, but in a decent language. Because when instructing students and speaking about the mysteries of sex, it should be done with modesty and vividly, and never in vulgar style, because that would be very serious, it would discredit us greatly, people would be scandalized, and erroneous concepts would form about our teachings. Obviously, the restrained desire will completely transmute the sacred sperm into creative energy. Well, it is important for you to know that sexual energy, which is so widely discussed today in physiology, psychology, psychoanalysis, etc., is the very mercury of the medieval alchemists. This creative energy, when transmuted, is the same mercury of the wise. Obviously, such mercury comes to condense or crystallize through the notes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, in a higher octave into the wonderful and radiant form of the astral body. So, the astral body is not a necessary implement for human life. People live without an astral body. The vital body perfectly ensures, or completely guarantees, the existence of the physical body without the need for an astral body. The astral body is a luxury that very few can afford, but it is well worth it. One knows they have an astral body when they can use it, when they can walk with it, when they can move through space with it. With such a vehicle, one attains immortality in the astral world, becoming immortal in that region. In a second, higher octave, with the notes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, the mercury of the wise crystallizes into the famous and radiant mental body. When one possesses a mental body, they receive direct illumination. With a mental body, we can grasp and understand all the teachings of the universe. A little further along, we have the conscious will body. No one is born with a conscious will body, but through the transmutation of sexual libido, the mercury of the wise, in a third, even higher octave, it crystallizes with the notes do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, into the extraordinary form of the causal body, or conscious will body. With such vehicles physical, astral, mental, and causal, it is clear that one then receives the soul and spiritual principles and becomes a human being. The first birth, as you saw, was that of the planetary or physical body. The second birth is the birth of the Son of Man, the birth of the man himself, concretely speaking. Thus, one of the factors of the revolution of consciousness is to be born as a man. In the first case, what is born is the intellectual animal; in the second birth, the man is born, the son of man, the true man. It is said that the true man is the causal man. Why is the true man called the causal man? Simply because they have created the causal body, which is the last of the bodies necessary to become a man. Then their center of gravity becomes established in the causal world, they live there, in that region. The causal world has a deep, intense, electric blue tone. That is its fundamental or basic color, the color of pure ether or akasha. There, one finds that everything flows and ebbs, goes and comes, rises and falls, grows and shrinks. In the world of natural causes, we come to know the entire chain of effects and causes, of causes and effects. Every cause has an effect, and every effect becomes a cause, in turn. Every word we say can cause many effects, a whole series of effects. On one occasion, while in the causal world, I listened to a man who was speaking, giving a lecture. I intentionally interrupted that causal man to object to one of his words. That causal man remained silent. It was wise of him to do so, but I immediately saw how a result of my words, of my objection, appeared. When that meeting ended, immediately, because the causal man was leaving, and the meeting was over, each person left saying something, their opinion. And those opinions, in turn, produced other results, and those other results produced others, and others, and others. In the end, I found that the interruption I had made had caused an entire series of consequences. I had done it intentionally, to investigate the law of cause and effect, and that was the result. In the world of natural causes, one comes to understand what the law of cause and effect is. Clearly, the lords of the law operate there. With their scales and balances, they are always active, recording in the Akashic records the debts and credits of each of us. In some gatherings in the world of natural causes, one is quite astonished to find the different adepts incarnated in the world, gathered in the agora and all dressed civilly, as we dress here in the physical world. I do not mean that this is always the case. Of course, inside the temples, the adepts wear their sacred vestments, but in certain gatherings, in certain assemblies, so to speak, all these masters who have physical bodies in the world, attend dressed civilly, like gentlemen, decently, as if they were in the physical world, lots of ties, by the way, I do not even own a tie, lots of suits, very neatly dressed, lots of wristwatches, etc., 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 and other such things. Why is this? Well, because that is the region of the man, the real man, the true man, the region of the causal man. In truth, I tell you that my center of gravity is in the causal world. To speak here with you, I must make a great effort because I project myself from the world of natural causes. With all my vehicles, I live in the causal, including the mental and astral bodies. If I want to enter the mental world, I must project myself from the causal into the mental, with the mental body. If I want to travel through the astral, I must project myself from the causal into the astral to enter the astral body. And to communicate here with you, I must enter the physical body and speak with you. And obviously, using this apparatus that allows me to talk with you, but normally I live in the world of causes. And every causal man lives in that region. Thus, the second birth is to be born as a causal man, that is, as a true man. And that is the first factor of the revolution of consciousness, to be born. Second factor, to die. If the seed does not die, the plant will not be born. It is necessary to die. In other words, the animal ego must cease to exist within us, in our psyche, if we truly want to enjoy authentic enlightenment. Normally, Gnostic brothers, aspirants, our affiliates, suffer greatly from a lack of enlightenment. They would like to move in the ineffable regions, visit nirvana or mahaparinirvana, and listen to the music of the spheres, etc., but upon finding themselves trapped, enslaved in this three-dimensional region of Euclid, unable to perceive any of those wonders of the higher worlds, they suffer immensely. And, of course, their suffering is logical, they have reason to suffer. Some want to get ahead of themselves. Speaking in colloquial terms, I would say that some want to saddle the horse before they have it, or milk the cow before buying it. They try to be space explorers, yet they haven't acquired the faculties for it. Sometimes they get involved in spiritualism and end up becoming mediums, etc. And by the way, the result of mediumship is epilepsy. All the epileptics we have investigated were mediums of spiritism in past lives. So, it's not at all pleasant to become epileptic, it is very difficult, very hard. Moving forward, I will tell you that enlightenment is not possible if the ego is not disintegrated. Normally, consciousness, or I should say, abnormally, because I wouldn't call that normally, is bottled within the self, within the eye of experimental psychology. It is clear that as long as consciousness remains bottled within the ego, trapped in the self, it will be asleep, functioning according to its own conditioning, becoming subjective, incoherent, imprecise. I've heard what I've been told, regarding the attacks of the Dark Ones in Guadalajara. But I've responded that all of that is due to subjectivism, to the ego. That some brothers become possessed by demons, that the witches of midnight, riding on their brooms, come to torment the good brothers, that they are incessantly attacked, the words of death and many other incoherences, which to me smell more like that Hadean sect. What are they called? Student, voodoo. Master, voodoo, voodoo, now I remember. Naturally, that is ultimately disastrous, isn't it? But none of those incoherent, imprecise, vague matters, witches, vampires, 50,000 things like that, would happen if the attendees didn't have ego. The issue comes from the ego. When have you heard that a Gautama Sakyamuni was attacked by witches from the Sabbath, that they invaded him, that they possessed him, that Gautama, all of a sudden, as he stands, mortally wounded another person saying, "I'll kill you, I've come to kill you." That has never been seen among the initiates, right? So all of these things happen among people who have ego. If there is no ego, none of that happens. By destroying the ego, all of that ends. Because when one destroys the ego, when one goes through the Buddhist annihilation, consciousness then emancipates, it is liberated, it becomes self-awakened, it becomes objective, the incoherences cease, and nothing but total, absolute, clean enlightenment remains, without stains, without vagueness of any kind. When one has an objectivized mind, an objectivized consciousness, the only thing that reigns within is the clear light of the spirit. One moves, then, in the world of mathematics with perfection, in the world of music with harmony, in the world of color with true aesthetics. There is no longer any subjective matter, inconsistent, morbid, subjective phrases shine by their absence. Only the splendor of the being, the essence of the spirit, the aristocracy of intelligence, the nobility of the heart remains in us. One becomes a perfect adept. But matters like witches' sabbaths, death threats, midnight vampires, witches on brooms, and all that, right? Belong to the world, shall we say, of incoherence, of the subjective. And that is the basis. Our brothers, all of them, need to reach real enlightenment, to wake up from this millennial lethargy in which they live, but that would not be possible if they did not first go through the Buddhist annihilation. I could summarize the entire didactic process for Buddhist annihilation in very few words: we need to live alert and vigilant, like a sentinel during war. It is in the realm of practical life, in relation to our friends, at home, in the street, at work, where the defects we carry hidden spontaneously emerge, and if we remain alert, of course, we discover them and see them. Once a defect is discovered, it must be judged immediately and immediately subjected to analysis. Through the evident self-reflection of the being, we can directly know any defect. Once we have understood such or such psychological error, undoubtedly, we can afford to disintegrate it. We've reached a critical, difficult point in this talk here. Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, Nicole, Collins, and many other authors of the Fourth Way, also Gnostics like us, because, by the way, we are of the Fourth Way, or Fourth Path, thought that any inhuman psychic aggregate, that is, any defect, by the way, any I, could be disintegrated through simple creative understanding, and nothing more. Gurdjieff committed an unforgivable mistake, for which, naturally, he incurred grave karma, and that was speaking against the Divine Mother Kundalini. That he did it out of ignorance. I don't deny it, that's true. But in any case, ignorance of the law does not exempt one from fulfilling it. He confused the sacred serpent Kundalini with the abominable Kundar Tigwador organ and attributed to the Divine Mother Kundalini all the left-hand, dark defects of the abominable Kundar Tigwador organ. To help you understand better, I will tell you that there are two serpents, the one that ascends and the one that descends, the bronze serpent that healed the Israelites in the desert, coiled around the generating lingam, in the Tao, and the python serpent, with its 7 heads, crawling through the mud of the earth, which Apollo, enraged, wounded with his darts. The serpent that ascended the staff of Asclepius, the god of medicine, and the serpent that crawled in the mud, the tempter serpent of Eden. There you have the 2 legs of the cock of the Gnostic Abraxas. Thus, the serpent that ascends is sacred, it is Kundalini, the one that descends is the Kundar Tigwador. Gurdjieff's mistake was attributing the hypnotic, dark, and abominable effects of the descending serpent to the ascending serpent. That is where Gurdjieff went wrong. In Paris, there is the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, it is Gurdjieff's school. But I ask myself, which of them has managed to eliminate the egos? Which student has radically freed their consciousness? Which of them has reached objective enlightenment? None. Why? Because the mind, by itself, cannot fundamentally alter any defect. It can, yes, label it with different names, justify it, condemn it, find evasions or excuses to avoid it, it can hide it from itself or from others, but never disintegrate it. We need a power that is superior to the mind, but Gurdjieff took away that knowledge from his disciples, I do not take it away from my students. And I regret that Gurdjieff himself deviated from the meaning of the teaching I gave him, because Gurdjieff is my disciple, I regret, I say, that he made that grave error. He allowed himself to be influenced by other minds, and that is unfortunate. So, looking at things head-on, we need a power that is superior to the mind, and this is none other than Kundalini, the fiery serpent of our magical powers. Only she can pulverize any inhuman psychic aggregate, be it of anger, greed, lust, envy, hatred, etc., etc., etc. Of course, one must first discover the defect one wants to eliminate and then work on it, understand it, as the second requirement, and as the third requirement, eliminate it. And it can be eliminated with the power of the Divine Cosmic Mother, with the power of the Divine Mother Kundalini. But we must appeal to Kundalini, to Devi Kundalini Shakti. Appeal at the very moment we need to eliminate the psychic aggregate that we have discovered and understood. Yes, we must appeal to her and ask her to pulverize such a defect, and she will do so. Now, the greatest power of the sacred serpent, of the divine cobra of the temples, is found in the forge of the Cyclopes. If a couple, working in the forge of the Cyclopes, truly invoked the divine serpent during the full sexual spiritual work, they would receive a response, and it is obvious that Devi Kundalini would assist. One must, therefore, appeal to that transcendental and marvelous power of the cobra of the ancient mysteries, of the divine serpent. Those who do not have a partner, or a woman who does not have a consort, can also appeal to the sacred cobra, she will work all the same and disintegrate any defect. I only want to say that the maximum of her power is found in the forge of the Cyclopes, in Vulcan's burning forge. I speak to you in this language that I believe you understand, since you are brothers who have already taken the course, right? And therefore, you must be prepared to understand this language. Because when we speak of the sexual mysteries, we must speak with decency, with dignity, never in vulgar terms, always in an esoteric, uplifting, and essentially dignified language. If you manage to go through the Buddhist annihilation, if you manage to die radically, you will awaken absolutely, here and now, then you will become aware of life in the higher worlds. But we must die to awaken, I repeat, here and now. When one truly awakens, the problem of astral projection ceases to exist. One remains conscious, both in the physical world and in the higher worlds. Whether your body is asleep or awake, you always live consciously. The problem of astral projection disappears definitively and forever. Because if your body sleeps, you remain conscious, conscious in the astral world. You live consciously, act consciously there, and return to your physical body at will, whenever you wish. So, what happens to the problem of astral projection? As a problem, it ceases to exist. What is important is to awaken. The third factor is that of sacrifice for humanity. We need to love our fellow beings, but love must be demonstrated with clear, concrete, and definitive acts. It's not enough to say we love our fellow beings, no, we must demonstrate it with actions. We must be willing to ascend the altar of the supreme sacrifice for humanity, we must raise the torch of wisdom to illuminate the path for others, we must be willing to give even our last drop of blood for all our fellow beings, with true, selfless, pure love. Thus, the third factor of the revolution of consciousness is sacrifice for our fellow beings. To be born, to die, and to sacrifice for humanity are the three factors that make us true incarnations of the cosmic Christ. These three factors turn us into gods, even though we have human bodies. These three factors transform us into deities or ineffable gods, Elohims, divine daimons, etc. If we only worked with the first and second factor, to be born and to die, but did not love our fellow beings, did nothing to bring the light of knowledge to other people, nations, and languages, we would fall into a very refined form of spiritual egoism, which would impede any interior advancement. For if we only worry about ourselves and nothing more than ourselves, forgetting the millions of beings that populate the world, we unquestionably lock ourselves into our own selfishness. In that way, the ego of selfishness would not allow us to reach enlightenment. Selfishness can manifest in extremely refined forms, and they must be eliminated. Because as long as we have selfishness within ourselves, enlightenment will not be possible. Selfishness is made up of multiple egos, within which consciousness is trapped. It's true that we must disintegrate this multiplicity of egotistical selves. If we don't, consciousness will remain bottled up, narrow, limited, conditioned, and any possibility of enlightenment would be nullified. We must understand that all of humanity is one great family. Unfortunately, we are trapped by many attachments and only consider a few people around us as family, which is selfishness, because all human beings, without exception of race, creed, caste, or color, are one family, and that family is called humanity. If we only see as brothers those who have been around us since birth, we are mistaken. If we only want to serve those people who are called our relatives, we are walking a selfish path. It is essential to see a brother in every person. What I say is not mere sentimentalism, but because in truth, we are all brothers. It's not a merely sentimental phrase, it is real, just as it sounds. We are one family, one great family that should not be divided, a huge family that populates the earth, and that family is called humanity. We need to bring knowledge to our brothers, show them the path, so that one day they too can walk it and reach the final liberation. If we want happiness, we must strive for the happiness of others. The more one gives, the more one receives, but to the one who gives nothing, even what they don't have will be taken away. How could we reach authentic nirvanic or paranirvanic happiness here and now if we don't work for the happiness of others? The true happiness of the being cannot be selfish, it is achieved only through the sacrifice for our fellow beings. Thus, those who have reached, for example, very elevated stages of being, those who have entered the paranirvanic, mahaparanirvanic worlds, or the monadic or adic, or those who have finally fused with the eternal common cosmic Father, obviously, in some way, sacrificed themselves for their fellow beings in the world, and this gave them enough merits to truly attain the joy that has no limits or boundaries. So, when taking the missionary course, we must think about the common good, that we must love, yes, in an extraordinary way, all beings who inhabit the face of the earth. Not just love those who love us, because anyone can do that, but also those who hate us. We must love those who love us because they understand us, and those who hate us because they do not understand us. There must not exist within us something called hate. There are people who distill and drink their own poison, and suffer immensely, and that is serious. One must not be so foolish. The one who distills and drinks their own poison is a fool. The one who has created a little hell in their mind and carries that little hell in their understanding at all times is a fool. One must think that the best thing is to love, because if one turns their mind into a hell, they will never be happy. People are filled with resentment, and that is extremely serious, because wherever there is the self of resentment, love cannot blossom. There is no one without resentment. Everyone carries in their heart painful words, actions, or events, naturally accompanied by their consequences, which are the well-known resentments that lead to nothing. The resentful person does not know how to love, is vengeful, does not know how to love. The one who hates is very close to a curse. We must learn to understand others, to learn to see things from others' points of view if we want to know how to love. People are incomprehensible. They do not want to understand other people simply because they do not know how to see things from someone else's perspective. If one puts oneself in another's shoes, one learns to forgive. When one knows how to forgive, one learns to love. But if one is incapable of forgiving anyone, they do not know how to love. Now, forgiving mechanically is useless. One could forgive simply because they learned in the Gnostic doctrine that one must forgive, but that is automatic. It serves no purpose. Deep down, they would continue with the same resentment, the same hatred, and even the same suppressed or repressed vengeful desire. When we say forgive, it implies elimination. One cannot forgive if they do not eliminate the self of resentment, if they do not annul the self of bitterness, if they do not reduce to cosmic dust the self of revenge, the one that wants to get even, etc. As long as such selves have not been eliminated, through comprehension and with the help of Kundalini Shakti, true forgiveness is not possible. And if one offers forgiveness, it is automatic, and automatic forgiveness is not real forgiveness. We must be sincere with ourselves if we want to know how to love. If one is not sincere with oneself, they will never be able to love. Loving implies work, a demanding work on oneself. How could one love another if they don't work on themselves? If they don't eliminate from within the elements of discord, revenge, resentment, hatred, etc. When such inhuman elements exist in our psyche, the capacity to love is nullified. We need to love, yes, all our fellow beings. But, I repeat, this implies work. One cannot love while the elements of hatred still exist within themselves. If we want to love, we must be sincere, self-explore, self-investigate to discover those elements that prevent us from loving. There is much fake love in various pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist schools, that doesn't help. We, the Gnostics, should not accept fake love. We must be demanding with ourselves, are we going to love our fellow beings, or are we not going to love them? Let's be sincere. It's not about being swept away by sublime sentimentalism. We could believe that we love, when in truth, we are not loving. Love is something very sublime. I'll give you an example, or a few examples, of love. The founder of New York was a very intelligent man. He had a wife, a very dignified woman. When he founded New York, it seemed like a paradox. There was nothing there but vegetation, trees, mountains, etc. He conceived the idea of a great city as he contemplated that region. But it was the Golden Age, the era when people had a thirst for gold in the United States, though they've always had it, but in those days, the greed for physical gold, for gold mines, was especially evident. And while traveling the world, he made a mistake that I consider very serious. He abandoned his wife in the middle of the mountains. He didn't leave her for another woman, no, but for gold, to go seek the mines. In the end, he learned about her. Someone told him that she had died. He didn't worry much about it, as he was only consumed by an insatiable thirst for gold. Later, over time, he met a woman and married her, a different woman. He introduced railroads, established banks. When he was already a great man, while speaking before an audience, he suddenly noticed, among the people present, the woman he had abandoned. That man could no longer speak. He stumbled over his words, completely confused, because he thought she was dead. And she had been told that he had remarried and had 6 children. When he left the auditorium, he found himself face to face with her. He didn't know what to do. "Don't worry, I know you're married." He was bewildered, because seeing her reminded him of his first love. And he still loved her, only the thirst for gold had made him abandon her. He didn't know what to do. She said, "You can go, continue on your path." She still adored him. When he tried to walk away, he couldn't. It was difficult for him to part from her. But she gave him courage. "Don't look back," she said to him, "keep moving forward, don't stop because of me. You must succeed, I love you very much and I want you to triumph." He walked away like a sleepwalker until she was gone. She loved him too much. He could have immediately left the other woman and gone with her, but she preferred his happiness. That is love. Which of you feels capable of doing that? To be able to give up the most beloved thing, for the happiness of the beloved. Because love doesn't seek rewards, it's the gift of oneself, work without attachment to the fruits, only seeking the good of others, even at the cost of one's own happiness. Understanding love is a bit difficult. If you define it, you distort it. It's more like an emanation that arises, so to speak, from the very depths of consciousness, a functional aspect of the being. We need to understand, we need to comprehend the necessity of knowing how to love our fellow beings. Because through love we can transform ourselves, and by loving, we can spread blessings, bring the teaching to all the peoples of the earth, guide others with the utmost patience, learn to forgive others' faults. Unquestionably, as one brings the teaching to others, one will encounter many resistances. Undoubtedly, one will often be met with stones, but we must learn to love and forgive everyone, not react so much. People are always reacting to the impacts that come from the outside world. There's always a tendency to react. I've noticed this in the governing boards of lumicials. In the middle of an assembly, someone says something about someone else, and there's always an immediate reaction from the person involved. Sometimes with anger, sometimes with impatience, but in some way, they react. Rarely have I seen a board where someone remains impassive, without reacting to what others say. There's this tendency in everyone to react against everyone else. How funny people are! It's enough to press a button, and they thunder and lightning. And if you press another button, they smile sweetly. Humanoids are machines that everyone manipulates as they please. They're like a musical instrument, where everyone plays their own song. If someone wants you to smile, they just say sweet words and pat you on the shoulder, and you smile sweetly. If they want you to thunder or lightning, they just say a few harsh words, and you immediately frown and react. Even now, as I speak with you, I see some of you smiling a little. If I were to scold you right now, what would happen? You would change immediately, you wouldn't be smiling anymore, your eyebrows would frown. It's sad, but that's how it is. Why? Because we are machines, instruments that anyone can play, just like a guitar. If someone wants to see you happy, they say a few sweet words, and there you are, happy. But if someone wants to see you furious, they just say a few harsh words, and there you are, furious. In this way, we depend on others, we have no freedom, we are not masters of our own psychological processes, everyone does with us as they please. A few flattering words and immediately, we feel self-important, another word of humiliation, and we feel sad and small. If everyone controls us as they wish, where is our autonomy? When will we stop being machines? It turns out that to learn how to love, we need to acquire autonomy, because if we are not masters of our own psychological processes, we will never be able to love. How could we? If others can take us from a state of peace to a state of discord, when will we be able to love? As long as we depend on others psychologically, we are incapable of love. Dependence obstructs love. We need to end dependency, to become masters of ourselves, owners of our own psychological processes. When I had the reincarnation of Thomas à Kempis, I wrote in my book Imitation of Christ, in that ancient reincarnation, a phrase that says, "I am not more because I am praised, nor less because I am vilified, because I always am what I am." Thus, we must remain impassive in the face of praise and blame, in triumph and defeat, always serene, impassive, always masters of ourselves and our own psychological processes. Indeed, by walking this path, we will always be stable in what is called love. We need to establish ourselves in the kingdom of love, but we cannot do so if we are not masters of our own psychological processes. For if others can make us angry whenever they want, if others can make us feel hatred, if others can make us feel the desire for revenge, then we are obviously not masters of ourselves. Under these conditions, we could never be established in the kingdom of love. We would be in the kingdom of hatred, in discord, in egoism, in violence, but never in the kingdom of that which is called love. We must remain stable in the kingdom of love, we must take charge of our own psychological processes. If we knock on a door, for example, and we are met with stones because we are bringing Gnostic teaching, and if we walk away, let's say, with a desire for revenge, or terribly confused by pain, then we would not be fit to be Gnostic missionaries. If we come to a town to preach the word and the priest chases us away, and then we are filled with terror, would we be fit to be Gnostic missionaries? Fear disables us to love. What are we afraid of? Death? If we were born to die, then, what? One dies, a few days before or after, what does it matter? One must die. So, what are we afraid of? Moreover, death is as natural as birth. If we are afraid of death, we should also be afraid of birth, for they are two extremes of the same phenomenon called life. To be afraid of death? Why, if everything that is born must die. Plants are born and die, worlds are born and die. This very earth was born and one day will be a corpse, it will be transformed into a new moon. So then, why fear death? Death is the crown of all, and indeed it is even very beautiful. One should never look at death with horror, it should be seen as it is. Seeing a corpse in a coffin, in the middle of a room, does not mean understanding the mystery of death. The mystery of death is very sacred. And one could never comprehend the origin of life, the mystery of life, unless one has first thoroughly understood the mystery of death. When one truly understands what the mysteries of death are, one understands the mysteries of life. And death offers us delightful moments. With death comes peace. It is certainly worthwhile not to fear dying. And if someone were to die in the fulfillment of their duty, working for humanity, that person would be richly rewarded in the higher worlds. To give one's life for one's fellow beings is something sublime. That is what the divine Rabbi of Galilee did, it is what all the saints and martyrs did, Saint Stephen, stoned for teaching the word, Peter, crucified head downward and legs upward, to signify the work in the forge of the Cyclopes. They are true martyrs. Those are the ones who stand out, those are the ones who later arise, amidst the Mahamanvantara, as gods. Thus, to fear is absurd. The most that could happen to us is that we are taken to the firing squad, and so what? After all, what does it matter? To die a few days before or a few days after is of no importance at all. It is worthwhile to think about all these things. Out of fear, men arm themselves to kill others, out of fear, wars arise between nations, for each nation fears that another will invade it and arms itself, leading to disaster. Out of fear, thieves exist, who fear life, Out of fear, prostitutes exist, who fear hunger. Out of fear, one man kills another. Fear, then, is the root of many curses on earth. One must eliminate the eye of fear. At the threshold of the temple, we must leave fear behind. Unfortunately, there are different kinds of fears. Those who are afraid could never face the test of the guardian of the immense region. How could they confront it if they are afraid? The one who fears, when they find themselves outside the physical body, ends up screaming. It seems like I've already died, leaving my mom and dad, my siblings, my grandfather. What do I do now? You can be sure that we are alone, each of us, and that the only family we have is called humanity. After death, one must come to the conclusion that the last name one carried, the good reputation of father and mother, the affection of siblings, friends, all of that is left behind. One finds that they are no more than another creature of nature, and that is all, without earthly names or surnames, terribly alone, because dad and mom and siblings were only a day's fascination, none of that remains, we are frightfully alone. In the end, the only thing we have to seek within is the Father who is in secret and our eternal and always Divine Mother, Kundalini, and the Christ Lord. And family? All the millions of human beings. I am not just talking about those on earth, but those of all worlds in space. We are one big family, and that is the reality. And it is a disembodied reality I am telling you about, but it is the truth. Disembodied because you love your relatives very much, right? Now, if I had no family, you would say, well, since you don't have one, what does it matter to you? No, I have one too, and I realize that all of that is vain. I do not mean to say that I do not love my family. Yes, I love them, just as you love yours, only I have already directly experienced the reality of what family is, and I have come to the conviction that family is all of humanity. I hold no resentment against my family. Do not think that I am speaking with any resentment, no. When I say that I experienced the reality of what family is, I want to refer, in a transcendental way, to the teaching. Outside of the physical body, I was taught the mysteries of life and death. On one occasion, I was made to feel death in advance. I was made to leave the physical body. Once outside of the form, I was made to advance in time to see myself dead. What did I see? A corpse. What was in that coffin? A body. Which one? Mine. Who was standing before that coffin, in the room filled with flowers and wreaths for the dead? My relatives. Among my relatives, my earthly mother was there. I approached her, kissed her hand, and said, "Thank you for the body you gave me, that body served me well, it was wonderful, thank you." I approached all the other relatives, bidding them farewell. I left that dwelling and immersed myself in the bosom of nature, convinced that I was disembodied. What was there? Nature, valleys, deep mountains, oceans, clouds, air, sun. And my relatives, what about them? That was left in the past, I no longer had relatives. The names and surnames, my lineage, my people, my language, what had become of them? Things of the past. Now I was immersed in a wild nature, utterly alone. And then my dear family, what about them? I could only exclaim, I no longer have a family. And the beings that surrounded me? That was in the past, now I am alone, frightfully alone. I am merely a creature of nature, a wild nature. What remains are some valleys, some mountains, and land soaked by the rain. And my house? What house? You no longer have a house. And possessions? Even less earthly possessions. Where am I going to get them? So, who are you? A particle of nature, a wild nature that has nothing to do with family matters. Conclusion: my family is all of humanity or all humanities, or all the worlds of planetary humanities, and that is all. However, I felt a bit of sadness upon realizing that the silver cord had not yet broken. I would have liked to break it, but it remained intact. I had no choice but to return. I thought I was already completely detached from the physical form, I said to myself, and I had to return again. And I returned, yes, I entered my body. That is the reality, then, regarding relatives, kin, close ones, cousins, siblings, uncles, nephews, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and all that fascinates us deep down. We need to elevate our hearts a little with the phrase sunsum corda. Up hearts, and know that we are all one big family, to see in each person a brother, to feel each of our brothers as flesh of our flesh, as blood of our blood, not to see others as strangers, as individuals, as different people, because that is absurd. We are all one enormous, immense family called humanity. Therefore, we must sacrifice ourselves for that immense family, with true love. If we do so, we walk with the third factor of the revolution of consciousness in full form. Working for others is also rewarded. Even if one renounces the fruits of action, one is always rewarded. By working for others, we can cancel the old karmas that we bring from previous lives. I have known many sick people who live locked up in themselves, always complaining about their pains. One cannot talk to those people because time and again, they always come back with their same psychological song. They want to heal, but there is no doctor who can cure them, not even the Chinese doctor. Why? Because they have never thought about serving anyone, they have never thought about healing others or even cooperating for the remedies of some sick person who cannot, or of getting a glass of water for the thirsty or a plate of food for the hungry. However, they want to heal and think of nothing else but their well-known illnesses. I have seen many who suffer from various problems in life, economic problems, for example. Those who have economic problems undoubtedly caused economic harm to many people, in the past, and now they reap what they sowed, they take from their own chocolate. However, they complain and protest and blaspheme, and they want to improve their economic situation, but they do not remedy the harm they have done. They are not part of any cooperative, they are not able to share their bread to give half to the hungry, they are not capable of taking off a shirt to dress a naked person, they are not able to offer consolation to anyone, but they want to improve economically and ask us for services, to help them change their situation, but they do not care about serving anyone. They are parasites that exist under the Sunday. In that way, how could one improve economically? Every cause brings its effect. Karma is the effect of a previous cause. If one wants to nullify the effect, one must start by nullifying the cause that produced it. And the cause is nullified intelligently, knowing how to nullify it. With all these things, you will encounter many on the path, many who want you to cure them, but they never care to heal anyone, many who have serious economic problems but never think of cooperating in some way with someone, etc. Each person has their problems. Problems are created by the ego, and nothing but the ego, unfortunately. One can nullify all problems if one has no ego. If one has no ego, there are no problems. Why? Because there is no one who reacts within one's mind, there is no revanchist complicating the situation, there is no one who hates in us, or through us. Then there are no problems. The problems are created by the ego and nothing but the ego. By working in favor of others, one cancels old karmas. Because serving others means serving oneself. He who gives receives, and the more he gives, the more he receives, that is the law. The lion of the law is combated with the scale. If in one scale we put our bad deeds and in another the good, and if the bad deeds weigh more, the scale will tilt against us. But we could put good deeds in the plate of good and then tilt the scale in our favor. In this way, karma would be nullified. So, we must hit hard against the lion of the law with the scale. That is the key to defending oneself from karma. As the lords of the law say, do good deeds so you can pay your debts. He who has what to pay, pays and does well in business, but he who has nothing to pay must go to jail and lose all his goods. Therefore, we must do much good to pay our old debts. With the capital of good deeds, we can pay off old karma without needing to suffer. There is no need to make our lives bitter. I know a guy, XX. He suffers immensely, always in a bad financial situation, always in misery. Whenever there's a business opportunity, he fails. There's no venture he enters that doesn't end in failure. He has a wife and children, with whom he constantly argues. He is a Leo, so is she. They shouldn't be fighting, but it seems that Leos fight incessantly among themselves. They are not happy. I've seen them in the Chapultepec Zoo, there, clawing at each other, they don't stop fighting. Leo with Leo seems not to understand each other. Well, the curious thing about this guy XX, whose name I won't mention, is that he always asks for financial help, for us to work for him in the world of causes and effects, but I've never seen him do anything for his fellow man. He asks, but he does not give. He asks, and asks, but never gives, nor gives, and asks. But, with what right does he ask if he does not give? It's like wanting someone to forgive his debts if he is not able to forgive his fellow men. One says in the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors." If one does not forgive his debtors, his enemies, what right does one have to ask the Father to forgive him? What right does he have to ask for forgiveness when he is not capable of giving forgiveness? With what right does he ask for mercy when he cannot give mercy? With what right does he ask for charity if he is not capable of giving it? And so they all are, they ask, but they do not give, and that is very serious. The Gnostic missionary must give. What will he give? Wisdom and love to his fellow men. That is what he will give. He will assist, he will help, but with love. Through magical chains, we can help our fellow men. The chains are wonderful, whether to radiate love or to heal the sick. With the chains, one can invoke the masters of science to assist the sick. With the chains, one can invoke, for example, Raphael, who is a great universal healer, the same one who healed the patriarch Job, the same one who healed Tobias, the great universal or world healer, great physician. With the chains, one can also invoke doctors like Harpocrates, Galen, Philip Theophrastus Bombastus of Hohenheim, Aurelius Paracelsus, etc. With the chains, we can invoke powers of light to assist us at a given moment, to conjure the powers of darkness to leave us in peace, etc. The magical chains are formidable. With the left hand, we receive, with the right hand, we give. The chain forms extraordinary magnetic force circuits. With the chains, we can perform great works of high magic. The universal Gnostic Christian movement marches victoriously on all fronts of battle. Today it is established throughout the Western Hemisphere, with about 5 million people. And at this moment, it is preparing to launch into Europe. And of course, before long, it will have established itself in Europe. Later, we will establish ourselves in Asia. So you must work for humanity. Once we have done our work in Europe, we will establish ourselves in Japan to do our work throughout the Asian continent. We are delivering to humanity the gospel of the new age of Aquarius. There will be a great cataclysm with the arrival of Hercolubus. This is a giant world, 6 times larger than Jupiter, thousands of times larger than Earth, belonging to the Tyla solar system. The entire system is moving closer to our solar system of ores, and of course, this world, that Hercolubus, has an immense orbit. Every time it has approached Earth, it has caused a catastrophe. When it approached Earth in the times of the continent Mu, great earthquakes occurred and many volcanoes erupted, and finally, Lemuria sank beneath the depths of the Pacific over 10,000 years. When it approached Atlantis, it sank into the ocean that bears its name, the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantis sank with all its millions of inhabitants. Now Hercolubus is coming again, and I can assure you that it will cause a total revolution of the axis of the Earth. When it gets too close, it will pull the liquid fire from the world's interior, and volcanoes will erupt everywhere accompanied by terrible earthquakes. And remember what our ancestors of Anahuac said, This is something that has great value for us Mexicans. The sons of the fifth son will perish in terrible earthquakes. There has just been a great earthquake in Europe, resulting in about 7,000 and some dead, buried. The federal district here in Mexico is awaiting another great earthquake that will destroy the federal district. This earthquake will also affect the entire north of our country, Mexico. We Mexicans must be prepared for this great earthquake. Thus, great events will occur in the future. When Herculubus arrives, fire will erupt everywhere. Volcanoes will appear, and earthquakes will destroy everything that currently exists. That will be the day of the great universal fire, preached by Peter in his epistle to the Romans, when he said, "And the elements burning will be dissolved, and the earth and all the works that are in it will be burned." Later, the last thing Herculubus will do in its supreme approach will be to produce the revolution of the earth's axis. The oceans will change their beds. The seas will shift, and the current lands will be submerged under the waters. Nothing of this perverse civilization of vipers will remain, everything will be destroyed. It is clear that there will be a small group that will be saved from the waters, as there always has been. We are working to organize that small group, and the Gnostic missionaries have the duty to work. That group will be the World Salvation Army, that group will be selected in its time and hour. Before the final cataclysm, the brothers of Tibet, of whom I am one, my insignificant person, will work, let's say, as a team, to rescue from this horrible civilization of vipers those who have worked on themselves, those who have achieved, well, the dignity that corresponds. We will take them to a secret place in the Pacific, to a place where nothing will happen. And in this, the brothers of some secret groups from the Himalayas and I agree. Those who will be taken to that island will become the nucleus of the future humanity that will emerge later. In those days, I say, after the great cataclysm, the earth will be enveloped in fire and steam, and the few who form that nucleus will live. Then, among the mist, they may be considered as children of the mist, like the Nibelungs of ancient times. When a double rainbow shines in the clouds, new lands will have emerged from the depths of the ocean. And in those new lands, a new humanity will live, an innocent and pure humanity, a perfect humanity. Then the golden age will come, announced by Virgil, the poet of Mantua, when he said, "The golden age has come, and a new progeny commands." We are working to create the World Salvation Army. It is our labor and will be the labor of all the missionaries. We will open lumicials everywhere, with the purpose of creating that World Salvation Army. The times of the end have already begun, and we are in them. Herculubus is visible to all the observatories in the world. In the patriarchal seat of Mexico, we have a cosmic map about the great event that is approaching. Where did that map come from? It came from a newspaper archive. Who traced it? The astronomers. It is an official map known in all the observatories on planet Earth. If the esteemed astronomers have not published it, what is the reason? Censorship. They are prohibited from bringing the people, so to speak, to a state of psychological desperation. They are prohibited by law, but they do not ignore it, they know, and they have the maps in their possession. So what I am talking about is something completely official, already known. Now you will understand why we are so concerned, at this moment, about spreading the teaching. It is clear that we need to cooperate with the Sunday. The sun will end this race and will establish a new one on the map of the world, and we need to cooperate with the Sunday. This race has already borne its fruits. What it had to give, it has already given. We are in the final hour, the clock of destiny is stopped. The old Saturn, in the form of a skeleton, with his scythe in hand, is next to the clock, and at any moment, the catastrophe. And that is the harsh reality of the facts, my dear brothers, and for now, I conclude this talk with you. Well, brothers, peace be upon you. And then you will know the secret doctrine of the Savior of the world. All of this is in the Pistis Sophia, but it needs to be explained. It wouldn't be enough just to hand over a vulgar version, no, all of this implies unveiling it. So you see that one, through Kabbalah, through alchemy and Kabbalah. Student. Teacher. Of course. If one knows it, we need to understand the deep meaning of each phrase, of each word of the Savior, then you understand the meaning of the Pistis Sophia. We are going to deliver the Pistis Sophia, but unveiled and explained. And so, the knowledge will be accessible to all. It will be for next year, by the end of next year. The work is extensive, the work of translation. I have the task of explaining each part, and there is the doctrine. Student. Teacher. It is condensed in the Pistis Sophia, all the powers of the Savior are there. Only the initiated rabbis or the Gnostics who have received the donum Dei, the gift of God to understand the great work, the magnus opus, can understand it. Student. Teacher. In any case, my dear friends, we have no choice but to manufacture gold, we have no other remedy. Above all, the purpose of these studies is this, to manufacture gold, because otherwise, one has done nothing, and he who does not know how to make gold knows how to do nothing, and from gold comes power. Of course, one must know how to understand. What do you say? Student. I wanted to ask you, Master, how could you explain to us what you say, that in the world of causes, there are souls that do not have a causal body? Teacher. Yes, these are souls that have not yet done the great work, and they live in the causal world. Since they have not done the great work, they do not have bodies, they are devoid of fire. That is why at the dawn of the aurora of any Mahamanvantara, the autogenerators, the autogenerated and the generated emerge. The autogenerators are those who are already capable of generating themselves, who created their bodies. Autogenerados are those who have already generated themselves. The ungenerated also emerge, those who have not created the bodies, that is, those who have bodies and those who do not, emerge from the great invisible at the dawn of creation. Creating the bodies is essential, those who have not created them can create them. To create them, one must do the great work. In the causal world, we find millions of souls that have not yet created bodies, that have not done the work. They can be recognized at first sight, and the causal man knows them, and those souls are very obedient, they obey the causal man, but they have not yet done the great work, they await to do it in the future. Student. Could you tell us in the previous discourse, how do you explain that custom of Hadeans, that they cry when a child is born and rejoice and celebrate when someone dies? What transcendental meaning could there be? Teacher. Well, it is a form of understanding, because, really, death is not something to cry about. The process of dying is as natural as that of being born. For them, being born is harder than dying. Essence comes to this world to suffer, upon dying, one leaves this field of bitterness, that is why they celebrate when someone leaves. But that is how it is a form of their understanding. Student. Teacher, to what extent could Nostradamus's predictions be accepted? To what extent could they be acknowledged? Teacher, Nostradamus has never been wrong. But we must consider certain dates he gives concerning the future. He uses calculations and studies that must be understood. Because he speaks of the year 3000, 4000, 5000, but he does not refer to the current era but to the era of the Spirit. For them, the other world is like in the 5000s, they have their way of counting. Well, however, many of Nostradamus's prophecies are wonderful, and they have been fulfilled mathematically. It's worth studying, but it's hard to interpret. One needs to have the donum Dei to interpret it. His entire work, the centuries, is written in verses, and those verses lead many to error. Since they are verses in Old French, allegorical and symbolic, people have interpretations. Student, someone once said that it was from the Master. Is it true or not? Teacher, no, absolutely not. I did not have that type of reincarnations. Nostradamus is a separate and different individual, a great astrologer, a great seer. Many of his prophecies have already been fulfilled with accuracy, and he has everyone thinking about his prophecies, because they have come true and continue to do so, and he is the only astrologer whom no one has been able to laugh at. People are used to laughing at astrologers, prophets, seers, etc., but they haven't been able to laugh at Nostradamus because it has cost them dearly, meaning all his prophecies have come true and none have failed. Student: what did Nostradamus prophesy, Master? Teacher: well, he prophesied even his own death, between the bench and the desk, and there they found him dead. Then he was buried in a cathedral. The cathedral seems to me a cathedral in France. I don't remember the name of that cathedral right now. It wasn't Notre Dame in Paris. But yes, the curious thing was that some time later, a certain group of people went to uncover Nostradamus's tomb and found his body there. And a curse there that said, "Whoever profanes my tomb shall die, and you shall die." They read that, and those who had opened the grave went away laughing at the foolishness they had done, but that very day, they all perished in an accident, not one survived. So that man was a true prophet and continues to be a prophet. Everyone has laughed at astrologers, seers, prophets, but they haven't been able to laugh at Mr. Nostradamus. Their laughter has cost them dearly. Student: teacher: well, if that was the case, it has already been fulfilled, because Guatemala experienced a terrible earthquake, and that has come true, right? It has already come true, prophecy fulfilled, it was a fact. Student: Master, then did Nostradamus become a resurrected master? Teacher: well, as far as I know, Nostradamus did not become resurrected, but there is no doubt that he was a great astrologer, a great seer, because his prophecies have been fulfilled. He specialized in that, in prophecies and astrology, and wrote his book, The Centuries. They say he would spend the entire night in front of one of those copper basins, concentrating on a container of water, and as a seer, he could see all the future events in that water. He prophesied with absolute certainty because he provided dates and names in an extraordinary way. The Book of the Centuries still stands. It is a current book. I saw a movie about the end of the world commenting on Nostradamus. The movie was good, only its ending does not match. The ending of that movie is absurd because the earth appears completely sterilized by atomic bombs, with about 4 puppets crawling like serpents. All that is absurd because reality will be different. The reality is that with the arrival of Herculubus, mentioned by Nostradamus, there will be the revolution of the axis of the earth, revolution mentioned by Nostradamus himself, and the earth will seem to be taken out of its orbit, and that will be the case, as Nostradamus says. Then the seas will change their beds because the equator will become the pole and the poles will become the equator. With the change of the ocean beds, the current lands will sink to the bottom of the seas. Student: that date he gives for the year 2000, is it Jewish then? Teacher: well, he gives many dates that are Jewish. But the harsh reality of the facts is that, specifically, he says that in the year 1999 the final cataclysm will occur. He sets 1999 with the arrival of a very terrible king from the sky, which is nothing other than Herculubus, and the earth will seem to be taken out of its orbit and sunk into darkness. Student: what would be the strict requirements for the 6th race? Teacher: to be part of the future core of the 6th root race, from the first point of view, one needs to have annihilated the ego. Because in the 6th root race, no one with ego will be given a body. Anyone who has an ego could not inhabit the 6th root race. Student: Master, if a person is working and hasn't finished, what awaits him? Teacher: the abyss and the second death. That is, to be able to enter the 6th root race. Whoever still has ego cannot be given a body. Student: I mean, if someone is working with some initiatic degree, something, but still has subjective entities. Teacher: if he has subjective entities, even if he has a high initiatic degree, he cannot be given a body if he has ego, even if he has a high initiatic degree, because he would harm others and would destroy the golden age. Student: even if I'm working, Master? Master, but you have not dissolved the ego. Under those conditions, no, for the future sixth root race. It could be that for charity, one might be sent to another world in space, but here on planet Earth, those with ego cannot take form. One single person with ego is enough to end the golden age, just one, that one spoils all the others, harms them. The golden age would fail because of one person, that wouldn't be fair either, that an entire age fails because of one person, due to the whim of a master, of a single individual, that isn't just. The earth has already suffered much with this race, it is right that it rests a little, and the earth suffers, it deserves a little rest, doesn't it? Student. Master, hey? Student, it has worked for humanity. Master, to other worlds in space where favorable development can be found. Student. Master, yes, once free of ego, one can return to Earth. Student. Master, yes, in the centuries. Student. Master, yes, there is the possibility of being absorbed there by the fourth vertical, in the Bermuda Triangle. Student. Master, those who have dissolved the ego, or part of the ego, will be able to finish dissolving it on the island where the new Exodus will head, because there will be a group of select humanity that will be secretly taken to a place in the Pacific, and there, that select people will be able to finish dissolving the ego, if they haven't already, so that when the double rainbow appears in the clouds and new lands emerge, that person or persons can enter, let's say, the new lands. Student, those ships. The Tibetan Brothers. Of those who have participated in the Exodus. Master, well, yes, and many will be able to be taken in those same cosmic ships to that island. It is also very true that, currently, there are our people, earthlings, living on Ganymede, which is a moon of Jupiter, or living in places like Mars, Venus, on Jupiter itself, etc. They are earthlings who are disappearing, who have been sought but not found, they have been taken away. They, undoubtedly, cross paths, or have crossed paths or will cross paths with people from other planets, right, to where they have been taken. The result of those crossings is essential, the result of those crossings will be brought back to Earth when the hour of the Golden Age arrives. And the result of those crossings will in turn intersect with the fundamental core, and from there will emerge a race with absolutely new faculties. Student, what will be the new name of the new race? Master, well, in the Universal White Brotherhood, the new race is called the race of Karadi. Student, of Karadi. Master, Karadi. Just as this race is the Aryan race, the future race is that of Karadi. Student, is there any esoteric reason? Master, well, there may be, but no, I haven't thought to ask yet. I only know that they call it that, but I have not found out why. Since everyone calls it Karadi, I also say it that way, but I haven't discovered it. Student, Master, allow me the last question. Given that I will present my case, my parents have provided me, since I was little, with clothing, footwear, medicines, education, and everything, and it turns out that I come across Gnosis, and because I have not been able to fulfill my obligations to them, I feel like an ungrateful child who does not know how to repay the favors they have given me. How then could I repay them for all that? So I don't know if I will return there or continue in the mission. Master, well, the harsh reality has already been answered by the great Kabir Jesus when someone told him, Master, allow me to go first to bury my father who has died. Then Jesus replied, let the dead bury their dead, and you take up your cross and follow me. So we have no choice but to follow the inner Christ, right? That is the command. And when Lot's wife looked back, at the moment when she was leaving with her husband from the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, it is said that she turned into a pillar of salt. And the great Kabir warns us about the end times, saying, let those who are in the fields not return to the cities, let those who are on the terrace not come down from it, let those who are walking not turn back. In a word, Jesus warns us of the necessity to march, definitively, towards what we must march toward. All this may seem a little cruel, but certainly, that is the path of the Superman, and so it is. Student: then, am I not making any mistake at this moment? Master: well, you are, at this moment, following the inner Christ, and therefore you are not making any mistake at all. That is the path of the inner Christ, that is obvious. And there is no turning back. Peace be with you, brother. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Student: Master, we know that, the missionaries who have gained experience in the field of delivering the mission, to Europe, how do you see the language situation? For example, when the brothers go to Spain, there is no problem, but to other countries, how would that be resolved? Master: well, as long as one doesn't know how to manage a language, a missionary won't be able to go to France if he doesn't speak French. How are we going to send him to France without knowing how to speak French? How are we going to send him to Germany without knowing how to speak German? If we are going to establish a base, or are starting to establish one in Canada, it is precisely because of the linguistic and social issue. In Canada, the brothers will need to train in English, French, and other languages. There are also European colonies of various kinds there, Italians, Germans, Swedes, etc., etc., etc. Obviously, through these colonies, it will be possible to achieve certain contacts with Europe. And since there are so many European colonies in Canada, where English and French are especially spoken, the missionaries will be able to train there and learn other languages. And as they get ready for their tasks, they will then be sent to Europe. Thus, languages will need to be mastered in Canada. The relationship with other peoples of Europe will be able to be established from Canada. In Canada, then, there will be the base of operations for Europe. It will be like a kind of bridgehead, like a springboard for Europe. There is much to be done in Canada. The task is tremendous. It is already functioning. We have a small group in Canada, which will be expanded. SB, the missionary, is also going there, and our brother Man and his wife, the Japanese sister, what is her name? Student: Miss Hiko. Master: Miss Hiko. Well, they are all going to Canada, and behind them, other missionaries will follow, and we will establish, let's say, a bridgehead there, a base for Europe. Anyone receiving orders to depart for Europe must first have trained in Canada. And of course, the missionaries will be duly financed, and that will be a problem that will be addressed now, precisely in the Council. Because we will not send our missionaries without providing them financially, we will have to provide them financially, and they will go properly financed, not only for food but also for work, for propaganda, for the halls that need to be rented, the auditoriums that need to be secured or rented, etc. So we will send them to Europe, duly financed, so that none of them will suffer hunger, cold, or nakedness. Everyone must be sent very well financed, and the Gnostic movement will finance all the missionaries going to Europe and Canada. Student: I imagine we have to learn English, right, Master? Master: well, we need to master English and French as the first priority, and then we will continue with other languages. For now, we are starting with English and French. Student: Master, knowing that this entire mission, so to speak, that we have to carry out on the European continent, is known to coincide more or less with World War III. That is to say, should every missionary be embodying courage, to face the fact that the mission will have to be executed in the midst of World War III? Master: yes, there is the possibility that a third world war may break out while we are in full struggle, right? But in any case, there will be no problems on that side, because there will also be a base for Europe. We will have it in the Canary Islands, in the Canaries, where I myself plan to settle. We will depart from there to England, France, Holland, the Netherlands, Italy, etc., etc. So, in case of danger, we will all gather in the Canaries while things pass. Yes, possibly on the island of Tenerife, where a Gnostic lumicile is already being built, in Tenerife. These are islands that are somewhat isolated, where we could help our brothers and protect them. Well, with certain powers and forces, and all, so that nothing happens. Student, master, knowing, in reality, the kind of pride that Americans show in their actions, and moreover, the enormous number of churches that exist in the U.S., wouldn't the work of the first Gnostic Christian Church of Ephesus in New York be somewhat overshadowed? Could it function strongly with that name, or what do you see? Master, well, so far it is functioning well. Student, yes, but considering that so far it has been among Hispanics, let's see how it will be with Americans who have a different psychology. What do you think about that? Master, the superior forces of the universe completely protect the Gnostic Church, even with the name of Ephesus, in New York and throughout the territory of the United States. I am absolutely sure that everything will go successfully. We have heavy enemies. We have that Black Lodge that has camouflaged itself with the name of Gnostic Church in the United States. That institution may be strong, but it cannot harm us in any way, not from a legal standpoint, because we have our own legal personality. We have nothing to understand from them. Moreover, we are going to deliver to humanity the secret doctrine of the world Savior in complete form. We will unveil the hidden treasures, among the Pistis Sophia. Student, yes, Master, but they mention that they have the Pistis Sophia. Master, everyone has it, not just them, they have it in France, they have it in Germany. The Pistis Sophia is known worldwide, but they do not know the doctrine enclosed in the Pistis Sophia, which is different. And it is my duty to deliver it to humanity, and I am going to deliver the Pistis Sophia, not only translated but properly unveiled and explained in the light of the ancient Gnostic mysteries. Student, Master, would you consider it wrong to change the name of the Church in the United States? Master, it would be absurd. It should continue as it is. Because as it stands, it allows us to defend ourselves. If we changed the name, we would expose ourselves to being attacked very soon. Student, what is it called, Master? Master, Church of Ephesus. Student, the first Gnostic Christian Church of Ephesus. Teacher, thus, it is appropriate that it is. Student, teacher, I ask you because there have been, let's say, controversies within the same group, thinking that, adjusted, let's say, to the type of American psychology, it wouldn't be too surprising and wouldn't attract attention, in the context of their teaching, and there have been people who have expressed that it should be given another name. Teacher, well, those people do not know how to balance dangers, right, nor foresee them. With the name Church of Ephesus, we are very well protected. It's better that we remain with that name, so we avoid being attacked. That's a very good key for defense. Student, undoubtedly, when there is a greater need for other lumicials, they will open up, right, teacher? Teacher, they will gradually open up. For now, things are going well. There is a group in San Francisco, another group in New Jersey, there is also hope to organize a good group in Miami. Student, it's already. Teacher, and little by little, our institution will be expanding throughout the United States. Student, New York. He has a very good idea about the matter of. With all the members there, of the church. So we are creating some chains there because we are facing many problems with the tax declaration. So we made some chains to see if the tax declaration is granted to us. And this kid. And the president of Projects for all of Latin America. Would be a help for the entire Gnostic movement. Teacher, well, of course, we agree on this matter, help will be provided through the chains throughout America. Student, because each member could donate. For each member then it would be a very good for the Gnostic movement. Teacher, well, of course. We need to provide that help, organize chains in all the lumicials in America, that's basic. Student, it's a non-profit organization. Asking for help from a company or businesses. The Institute of Universal Charity could integrate more strongly. In terms of the economy to help the needy countries. Teacher, it's reciprocal, right? Student, it is processed. Teacher, it would be worth it to carry out that campaign, it would be wonderful. Student, from my own experience, we can see that sometimes, even walking down the street, a large amount of clothing can be accumulated, which can be very easily sent to countries, let's say, Latino, where poverty reigns more strongly, easily, even without achieving that, but if that is achieved, extraordinary. If it can be achieved, let's say, a vessel that transports those products that we ourselves collect in the United States. What do you think of that work? Teacher, that would be wonderful. Student, we also think that a force is needed, like the chains. Teacher, well, we have to provide it. Let's see if a manifesto can be made, some form, an order in writing, right, to provide help with the chains and being helped from within. It can be crystallized, it can be realized, let's do it. Because we need the complete triumph of Gnosis throughout the territory of the United States, from New York to San Francisco and from Canada to Mexico. Student, I have a question. Since I have been participating in the course, I would have to, let's say, return to the United States to try to continue in the work, in the mission. Teacher, well, of course, because we need to carry out a gigantic work throughout the United States, opening lumicials everywhere, across the country, and that our institution figures as an institution, well, that does not profit anything, a selfless institution, to obtain that support, right, from the government. That is the objective, however we achieve it, well, magnificent, and it must be achieved, well, with special work. Student, and how do we stand, teacher, here in Mexico? Teacher, well, now we must work intensively here in the country, in Mexico. The brothers who become missionaries, who take their course, some will be destined for the country, others for other countries, right, it all depends, but the main work now is here in the country. Student, for how long, teacher? Teacher, well, we will see, and each case is different, each brother has his own problems, each one requires special attention. Student, our companion A, who speaks Portuguese. Teacher, magnificent. He speaks Portuguese. Student, will I go to Brazil? Teacher, well, Brazil needs missionaries. Don't you feel very drawn to return to Brazil? Well, we must think if you want to work in Mexico too, wonderful. Student, teacher, but... Teacher, there we will see, each one has to define himself, each case must be studied separately, each one, separately, requires specific attention, defined, and each one must be oriented according to the needs of the movement and according to their own vital needs. Because the third factor of the revolution of consciousness implies sacrifices for the sake of humanity and is also necessary for inner progress, and each one needs their special attention, and each one will have their defined tasks in such or such region of the world. Student, are you going to do it, teacher, after the course? You're going to tell us, right? Teacher, well, of course, after the course, each person will receive specific guidance, defined guidance for each one. But there is much work to do, the United States also needs many missionaries, and in Canada, even more so. There we will establish the necessary base for Europe, for the leap to Europe. Student, do we need to go to Canada? Teacher, yes, anyone going to Europe must pass through Canada for training there. Student, every missionary who wants to go there. Teacher, to Europe, has to pass through Canada because there they need to train, questions of languages, relations, etc. That country is very important. Canada is needed for training. Everything is being planned this way because we need to advance throughout the land of Europe, establish the movement throughout Europe, and then we will continue with the Asian continent, and then I will have to position myself in Japan, so we can work from Japan throughout Asia. The Asian continent is vast, enormous, and we need to establish the Gnostic movement in all countries of Asia. As you can see, the work is gigantic. Student, teacher, will the branching of the Gnostic movement in Africa continue progressively? Teacher, in Africa, it is advancing. In Nigeria, Africa, we already have a group, and in the north, we are entrusting work to our brother ambassador from Venezuela to the government of Egypt. He will have special tasks in northern Africa, and this same brother ambassador is given the title of Grand Delegate of the Gnostic movement for all of Europe. He will have quite a delicate mission, which is to create friendships and make a favorable environment. The goal is to achieve friendships with all the embassies in Europe, to bring in, as they say, all the diplomatic corps of Europe. This is necessary for the movement to develop from the top down, with great strength. Student, does that mean, teacher, that it would be favorable for the movement for someone to achieve, through their country, some diplomatic delegation? Teacher, well, yes, it is favorable, and precisely the diplomatic and political part, we will work intensively in Europe. There is already an ambassador in charge of that work. Of course, to do that work, certain diplomatic parties, certain very special meetings, and all that will be needed, right? But yes, we are interested in bringing in all the diplomats of Europe. In this way, we will be able to move the train of life intelligently and wisely, and with great strength. Thus, a very special work is being done in that sense. With strength throughout the European continent, we will be ready for Asia. In Europe, we will make certain very strong impacts, in the world of science, necessary to put Gnosis on the stage. It will be my turn to create, above all, a very special impact, scientific, totally scientific. What will it be? Well, we need to deliver to the world the technical systems of communication with other inhabited worlds. We need to deliver the most perfect devices than television, for direct communication with extraterrestrials. It's something tremendous, isn't it? Devices more perfect than radio and television, through which direct communication with extraterrestrials will be possible. Student, do you mean it will include image and sound? Teacher, of course. More perfect than television itself, television will seem like a child's toy. Student, will those devices be brought from other planets or will they be built right here? Teacher, they will be delivered through my insignificant person to humanity, because the one who is here inside, will do it. He will deliver the devices. And factories will be built, they will be manufactured like new recorders, radios, and televisions. And those devices will be sold all over the world, and through those devices, extraterrestrials will collaborate with us, massively instructing terrestrial humanity, then a great cultural revolution will come. All the current scientific principles will be destroyed, and new principles will be laid down. Undoubtedly, this will produce a true revolution, and the vested interests will feel threatened and the powerful will rise up against us, but all will be in vain, we will win the battle. Student, where will those devices be manufactured, teacher? Teacher, in different factories around the world. Student, here on Earth? Teacher, here on planet Earth, in different locations. Student, what size will those devices be, teacher? Teacher, I haven't asked. I only know that the devices will be delivered, I don't know more. Student, and the date, either? Teacher, no, I only know they will be delivered, on the soil of Europe. I understand that when I am already there. Student, teacher, will this change in culture, philosophy, religion, and science be more or less for the fulfillment of Nostradamus' prophecy? Teacher, well, yes, because look at the extraterrestrials already massively instructing humanity, that will be terrible, everything that exists now will come crashing down, it will be a tremendous cultural revolution, that is obvious. Student, teacher, what can you tell us about the etheric motor? Teacher, well, no, I inform you about what I know, I haven't heard anything about the so-called etheric motor. Student, a Costa Rican missionary who was in Guadalajara told us that one of that type was being perfected in Brazil. Teacher, ah, that is a pressure motor, but it is not an etheric motor, it is pressure-based. It is possible to start a pressure motor, why not? That would be wonderful for eliminating, for example, smog. But it is very difficult to succeed because the vested interests violently oppose it, they become violent. Student, he also told us that that boy was a bodhisattva from ancient Atlantis, the one perfecting that device, who was a master, well, a fallen from Atlantis, that's how we were told. Teacher, who said that? Student, well, over there, we were told. Teacher, well, I haven't investigated that matter. I only know what is being talked about. We will see the results, they can be good, but we must fight a lot against vested interests. Student, when the Cultural Revolution comes, what will happen to countries like Russia, Cuba, and Communist China? Teacher, a cultural revolution like that will affect all the Soviet countries, and there will obviously be extraordinary events. It is possible that the powerful on earth will react against us, but they will be defeated because it is written, all the kings of the earth will fight against him, and he will defeat them with the sword of his mouth. He is the Word, and the Word is the Word, that is what is expected. Student, what about that which a certain clairvoyant saw, that this year a mothership would become present in the Pacific for all humanity, from which many ships would depart to all the planets, not as they have been doing until now, what do you think? Teacher, it is possible, there is nothing strange about that, it is possible. And of course, now more than ever, cosmic ships will become present everywhere and will become increasingly visible. Student, but, regarding what I specifically asked you, haven't you received any information about that? Teacher, no, they haven't told me anything about that. I believe it is possible. Student, teacher, last year I told you about the Cerro de Anparan in Sta. de la Sierra, Bolivia, about that temple that you informed us about, it is white, right? And the natives there report that there is a flat runway, thousands of years old, that is approximately 1,800 meters long. Does this mean that there was a sort of airport there? Teacher, yes, it is possible, there is nothing strange about that, because, indeed, in the past, extraterrestrials were more in direct contact with humanity on Earth. Student, and that area is influenced by a certain magnetism. Airplanes avoid flying over there because their instruments get distorted. People who want to approach the place observe certain water currents that appear and disappear, or the clouds approach and conglomerate there over the hill. There are two hills, but one is Anparan, and I want to inform you that they are possibly gifting us an area close to this Anparan hill to organize the Gnostic colony. If God wills, we will have that. Teacher, that is wonderful, such a place is very magnetic, it is very favorable, of course. There is no doubt that this is a cosmoport. There were many such cosmoports in ancient Atlantis. In Samlios, for example, there was a great cosmoport where ships from other worlds normally descended, then the extraterrestrials coexisted with the kings at the courts, and humanity respected them. In that ancient time, it was very normal for extraterrestrials to land in Atlantis, it was normal, it was nothing strange, and no one worried about it. Constantly ships ascended and descended in the cosmoport of Samlios. Student, teacher, does this mean that only because of the egocentrism of materialistic man in our time on Earth is it that they refuse to admit the existence of other extraterrestrial beings? Teacher, yes, purely, that is to say, there are already dogmas and a manifest wickedness, because even the astronauts who landed on the moon took photos of cosmic ships, and yet, they were prohibited from giving any information about that. Every time they tried to speak, they were silenced. One of those astronauts, to be able to talk about it, had to write a brochure on his own and circulate it across the United States. Maybe by now he has been excommunicated from NASA. I managed to see a photograph of someone, a very interesting photograph from NASA, one of those that miraculously survived, one of those crew members, one of those travelers to the moon, appears on the moon, and nearby, at a certain distance, a cosmic ship is clearly seen, and he managed to photograph it. Of course, the NASA people strongly opposed that type of photographs being made known, but he managed to hide one, and that one has been reproduced somewhere, I know it. But the NASA travelers, the astronauts, were prohibited from giving any report about that. All were witnesses to cosmic ships. So that is a harsh reality that cannot be denied. But, we might say, the scientists of the Antichrist, terribly wicked, want, with pain and true cunning, not to publish that and prevent people from knowing anything about this. Student, the brothers of the cosmos, specifically referring to the inhabitants of other planets, can they take all of nature, introduce it into the fourth dimension, and bring it back to the third dimension? Teacher, the inhabitants of other worlds can put their physical bodies into the fourth vertical, their ships as well, and travel through the fourth vertical. Student, I mean, the worlds, in terms of vegetation and things like that. Teacher, well, there are worlds governed by a number of laws, and there are worlds governed by other laws, worlds that belong to the three-dimensional world of Euclid and worlds that go beyond the three-dimensional world of Euclid, which exist in a fourth vertical. Student, which others exist in the third vertical, teacher? Teacher, in the third, we have all the worlds of the solar system. Student, except for the sun, teacher? Teacher, the sun itself is within the world of the three dimensions, length, width, and height, but there are worlds in the fourth vertical, and even here on Earth, there are regions of the Earth that are located in the fourth vertical, for example, the Nontrabeta, or Hidden Island, off the coast of Spain about 40 leagues from the island of Louisiana Palma. That island is in the fourth vertical, in the fourth dimension. At one time it was visible, now it is manifestly hidden, which is why they call it hidden, it is hidden within the fourth dimension. Student, teacher, and the civilization that is said to be within the surface of the earth, is it in the third or fourth dimension? Teacher, the civilization that is said to be within the surface of the earth, how? Student, no, not underground. Teacher, that is a hidden civilization, a civilization with flesh and blood people, bodhisattvas of Lemuria, bodhisattvas of Atlantis, who are governed by the king of the world, yes, that is precisely the people of Melchizedek, king of Salem. Student, so, does that mean that this entire civilization is wonderful, solar? Teacher, yes, it is a type of sacred humanity, right? People, we might say, from the conscious circle of solar humanity, those are the people of Agartha. Agartha is the name of this underground kingdom. They have mountains, houses, cities, temples, and everything underground. Student, in the third dimension? Teacher, yes, they have entrances, more than 500,000 people in Asia know the entrances to the kingdom of Agartha. Student, is this the same kingdom of Odin or Wotan? Teacher, no. I have never thought that, I have only thought of Agartha and Melchizedek, king of Salem. Wotan or Odin, that is from the Scandinavians, right? Exclusively Nordic. There are certain genus among the Nordics, but no, what we are talking about concerning Agartha is different, it is different, there, only the kingdom of Melchizedek, of Salem, enters. They have cosmic ships with which they can travel through the infinite, their gurus, lords of life and death, accompany them with flesh and blood bodies. Melchizedek himself is a man with a body of flesh and blood, a sacred individual, the genius of the earth. What were you saying? Student, yes, the last little question, have you given a method for extraterrestrial communication? Is there any other special one that we do not know about? Because we have not achieved an experience. Teacher, well, your intentions are very interesting, but it turns out that for now, they don't take you. The harsh reality of the facts is very different, well, to be able to get taken even for a little trip over there in those regions, a defined purpose is needed, right? For example, I was in direct contact with a group of extraterrestrials in the DF, over there in the Desert of the Lions. I was a witness to a certain ship when it descended in the Desert of the Lions, and I went toward the ship. The door opened, and the captain descended first, a man with copper-colored skin, medium height, thin, broad forehead, penetrating blue eyes, very intelligent, I would say genius, genius. His crew followed him. I estimate there were about 12 to 14 people, about 12 people. I myself had no hesitation in greeting him, and he shook my hand. I was amazed that he answered in perfect Spanish when I said, "Good morning." He replied, "Good morning" in perfect Spanish. Then, I requested the favor of him taking me to other worlds in infinite space. "Which one?" he said. "To Mars, it is my world." "Ah! That is just there," he said. I was perplexed, as Mars, to him, was like going from here to the corner, to that store right there, the corner store, and so on. I told him that I made my request as a real man, not as an intellectual animal. That I had full awareness of what I was saying, that I was a conscious man speaking to another conscious man. He remained silent. Finally, they all sat down in a clearing in the forest. There were 2 ladies among them. The ladies also sat on a log that was there. And one of the ladies spoke on behalf of the whole crew, saying, "If we place a plant that is not aromatic next to a plant that is, it is clear that the one that is not aromatic will become infused with the aroma of the one that is, right?" "Of course." I replied. "That is." She said, "Well, the same happens in the worlds. Worlds that were struggling in the past, referring to failed humanities, gradually became infused with the aroma of neighboring worlds, with the radiations, and now they are doing very well. We have just arrived here on planet Earth, as you see, and we see that here the same does not happen. What is happening here on this planet?" They had just arrived and asked me, astonished, "What is happening here?" They found a barbaric planet. They were perplexed. They decided to interrogate me to find out what planet it was. Well, man, I couldn't help but give the terrible answer. This world, I told them, is a mistake of the gods. But then, I decided to round off my concept better, and doing some evident self-reflection, I responded, saying, "This is due to the karma of the worlds." This word seemed formidable to them. The lady, with her head, without saying a word, nodded like this in agreement. The other lady nodded her head in reverence, and they all bowed reverently to what I said. Subsequently, they all stood up and said goodbye. I stubbornly went back again to make the request to the captain, right? I was willing to leave, right? Take me where? Far from this planet Earth, no matter the cost. I reiterated my request again and again. But the captain gave me a definitive answer. Since that day, I have been very happy. My curiosity was gone. On the way, we will see. They speak very little, and those words spoken by the captain meant a lot to me. He shook my hand. He turned around. Then the whole crew boarded the ship behind the captain. I had no choice but to leave before they were going to eliminate me, because I know that the moment it turns on its axis, it is very dangerous to be there. I withdrew to a convenient distance and then observed to see what would happen. The ship spun on its axis and departed into infinity. Since then, I have known that the way is the question. It refers to the secret way. Obviously, when I have the precious gem in my possession, I will be able to join that crew. I warn you of one thing, that crew is intergalactic travelers who travel from galaxy to galaxy. Because there are travelers who only travel within the solar system, but these travel from galaxy to galaxy. For them, talking about worlds is as natural as talking about such a street or the Zocalo, or San Luis Potosí, leaving one amazed, right? Hearing them talk about worlds, they are worlds that were not doing well in the past, and they gradually became infused with the radiations of neighboring worlds, and now they are doing very well. One is utterly astonished, talking about pure worlds. I was no less than amazed. They descended from a ship of moderate size, but that ship, as I learned, came from a mother ship. The mother ship remained there, in orbit, around the Earth. Then they returned to the belly of the mother ship. Wise men. Observing them, all with copper-colored skin, medium height, they appeared more like gods with human bodies. There is no doubt they were gods dressed in human bodies. brilliant, great mathematicians, great sages. Talking with one of them leaves one dumbfounded, amazed. They speak strictly as needed. When they say something, they fulfill it. For example, that thing about on the way, we will see. I know that depends, there I am on the path of the way, and they are seeing the way. When I achieve, then, the resurrection, I will also gain entry to that crew. Student. Was that contact with the extraterrestrial ship, that experience, a conscious act, let's say, that they knew they would meet you and you would meet them? Teacher. Yes, perfectly, because they telepathically called me to land, and I physically responded to their call in flesh and blood. This is something that happened in an absolutely personal way. I need to tell you, then, that they are gods and have absolute power over the elements. They wonderfully handle the forces of nature, wise in the fullest sense of the word. Since that day, frankly, the curiosity I had ended. Now I know that I have no choice but to work on myself in order to one day gain entry to that crew. That is the harsh reality of the facts. Student. About the civilization of Pluto? Teacher. Well, much has been said about the civilization of Pluto. It is a profound, esoteric civilization. Student. At 8 o'clock in the evening, teacher. Teacher. Yes, what time do we have? Student. It is 20 to 5. Teacher. 20 to 5? Student. And you haven't rested a minute, teacher. Teacher. I will truly say goodbye, but talk about whatever you want there. Second part. Obviously, there must be, that must lead us to the true happiness of being. First of all, it is necessary to understand the three factors of the revolution of consciousness. It is necessary to die. The ego, the I, the myself, the self, within which consciousness is bottled up, must be disintegrated on all 7 levels of being. To be born, it is truly necessary to create the superior existential bodies of being. When those vehicles have been created, we receive the anima and spiritual principles and become true men in the transcendental sense of the word. Third, we must love our fellow beings, sacrifice ourselves for them, fight for them, be willing to bring the teaching to all the peoples of the earth. There are the 3 factors of the revolution of consciousness. Our studies are didactic. Here you will be taught, esoteric keys and knowledge will be given to you, with which you can advance along the rocky path that leads to nirvana. It is necessary to disintegrate the undesirable psychic elements in each of us. It is urgent and unpostponable to create the superior existential bodies of being within oneself. Finally, to hold the torch high to illuminate the path for others, that is our duty. It is essential to always attend the studies. One should never fail to attend classes. Any error is inexcusable. All our errors must be analyzed, understood, and eliminated. Little by little, you will receive transcendental teachings, gradually great knowledge will be given to you, and in the end, you will be in contact with our elder brothers of the White Brotherhood. We will help you, not only in this world through knowledge but also, you will be assisted in the higher worlds. During the hours when the physical body sleeps, you will be subjected to esoteric instruction, given teachings and guidance to awaken. Peaceful tranquility.